Worst prison food in Cook County Jail. Rotten meals behind bars. The stench in Division 10. If you think hunger is punishment, you've never seen how they feed men inside Cook County Jail. Subscribe, because tonight the truth finally crawls out of the kitchen. The smell came first, before the screams, before the riot, before the lockdown. It was a sour, oily stench that drifted out of Division 10's kitchen vents and crept through the cell blocks like an invisible fog. The inmates called it the death smell. Officers said it was just old plumbing. But by the third week of March, the smell had a body count attached. Cook County Jail, Chicago's fortress of chaos. More than 7,000 inmates stacked into gray, crumbling buildings, each one sweating with tension, violence, and decay. The walls heard everything: whispered deals, muffled cries, the clang of steel on steel. But lately, all anyone talked about was the food. The meals had changed. No one knew when exactly it started, maybe after the new contract came in, or when the kitchen got restructured. But suddenly, the trays were different. Cold, gray, congealed. Meat that bent like rubber. Milk that fizzed when opened. And every morning, the same joke spread through the tiers: eat fast before it eats you. The collapse begins. On a wet Monday morning, Officer Daniel Briggs stood by the food line, half awake, coffee in hand. He'd worked at Cook County for 14 years. Seen stabbings, overdoses, even a hostage situation back in 2011. But nothing, he would later say, smelled like that kitchen. He watched as inmates shuffled forward with their trays. One of them, a tall man with gang tattoos along his neck, lifted his spoon, sniffed the food, and gagged. "What the hell is this?" the inmate shouted. The others began inspecting their trays. A few cursed, a few laughed bitterly. Briggs leaned closer. The stew had turned green. Not gray-green, not old food green, neon green, like antifreeze. "Just eat it," a guard barked from the corner. "You want the whole again?" The inmate threw the tray against the wall, splattering the food across concrete like sludge. Within seconds, the chow hall erupted, tables flipped, trays clattered, and the guards drew their batons. The riot lasted 6 minutes. It left 9 inmates bleeding, 1 unconscious, and 2 officers injured. But what stuck with everyone wasn't the violence, it was what they found afterward. Under one of the overturned trays lay a dead rat. Cooked. The cover-up. The next day, the official story read: inmate disturbance caused by gang altercation. No mention of spoiled food. No mention of the rat. But inside the kitchen, whispers began. Inmate workers, known as trustees, told stories about rotten meat being repackaged, food dropped on the floor being rinsed and served again, milk long expired but whitened with powdered substitute. And one name kept coming up: Sterling Foods Contracting, the private vendor that had recently taken over meal services for Cook County Jail. According to public records, Sterling had won the bid by undercutting the previous supplier by nearly half. Their promise? Efficient service. Fresh ingredients. Budget-friendly solutions. In reality, budget-friendly meant cutting corners so sharp they drew blood. The investigator. Enter Monica Reyes, a Chicago public defender turned freelance journalist. She'd spent years inside courtrooms hearing clients describe the filth of Cook County's meals. Most dismissed it as inmate whining, until one case crossed her desk. A lawsuit filed by a diabetic inmate named Robert Lang, who claimed he'd gone into a coma after being served contaminated food. The warden's lawyers called it an unfortunate coincidence. But Lang's medical records told another story. He'd suffered E. coli poisoning, traceable to spoiled meat. And when Reyes dug deeper, she found that Lang wasn't alone. Over the last 8 months, 43 inmates had reported severe gastrointestinal illness. 12 had been hospitalized. 2 had died. No disciplinary action. No inspection reports. Just silence. She decided to go undercover. The kitchen tour. With a falsified ID badge and a borrowed lab coat, Reyes entered the kitchen as a consultant for the county's health compliance board. What she saw defied belief. The air was thick with grease and rot. Greasy puddles pooled under broken refrigerators. Trays of chicken sat at room temperature, buzzing with flies. One worker scraped mold off bread with a butter knife while humming softly to himself. In the corner, a cook stirred a pot of stew so thick it barely moved. "You feeding this to animals or people?" she asked. The cook shrugged. "What's the difference?" Reyes nearly gagged. She snapped photos discreetly. The cracked freezer door, the rusted counters, the thermometers reading 50 degrees Fahrenheit where meat should be kept at 34 degrees Fahrenheit. When she asked to see the food storage logs, the supervisor smiled thinly. "Those are locked up," he said. "County records." He guided her out politely, his hand firm on her back. "Be careful, ma'am," he whispered. "People who ask too much about this place don't always get answers." The whistleblower. 2 days later, she got an anonymous call. The voice was low, cautious. "You were in the kitchen Tuesday, right?" "Yes," Reyes said. "Who is this?" "Doesn't matter." "You want proof?" "Meet me by Division 8 tomorrow, 3 p.m. The next day, she found him. A thin, nervous man in an orange jumpsuit, sweeping near the laundry truck. His name was Terry Coleman, serving 6 years for burglary. He'd been a kitchen worker for almost a year. "They're killing us in there," he said quietly. "You ever wonder why the food smells like chemicals? It's 'cause they wash spoiled meat with bleach. Says it kills bacteria." She frowned. "You're sure?" Terry nodded. "Saw it with my own eyes. They get shipments every Thursday, half the boxes already thawed. We tell them it's bad, they tell us to fix it. So we pour bleach, rinse it, cook it." "That's what you ate, ma'am." Reyes felt her stomach twist. "And the supervisors?" He looked around, lowering his voice. "They don't care. They get paid off every week. You think Sterling runs this alone? Nah, the jail's in on it." He handed her a folded piece of paper. "That's the name of the inspector who signs everything off. Remember it." Before she could open it, a whistle blew. A guard shouted from the gate. Terry shoved the broom into her hand. "You never saw me." He walked away, disappearing into the line of inmates. The name. That night, Reyes unfolded the paper under the light of her motel desk. 3 words scrawled in shaky handwriting: Sergeant Calvin Price. A name she recognized immediately. Price had been a corrections officer for over 20 years, a man who'd survived 3 riots and a corruption probe in 2015. He'd been quietly reassigned to kitchen oversight soon after. Reyes searched his record. No disciplinary marks. No commendations. Just an unusual note in his file, transferred at departmental discretion. But then she found something else. An old whistleblower complaint filed by another officer years prior, alleging that Price and unnamed staff members were receiving cash incentives from food contractors. The case had been dismissed. Now, the same man's signature appeared on every inspection report since Sterling took over. The pattern. Over the next week, Reyes pieced together the puzzle. Sterling Foods didn't just supply Cook County. They serviced 8 other facilities across Illinois. Each with identical complaints: spoiled meat, food poisoning, budget shortages. And every inspection passed. Every signature read, "C. Price." The deeper she looked, the clearer it became. The corruption wasn't a single rotten apple, it was an entire system. But exposing it would take more than photos or testimony. She needed the contracts. The money trail. She arranged a meeting with a contact at the county auditor's office. But before she could go, she got a message on her phone. "Terry Coleman found dead this morning. Suicide. Laundry room. Don't come back here." The turning point. Reyes sat frozen, the phone slipping from her hand. She'd spoken to Terry less than 48 hours ago. He had sounded scared, but determined. Suicide didn't fit. She drove back to the jail anyway, hoping it was a mistake. The guards at the gate stopped her. "Facilities on lockdown," one said. "Health inspection." "What kind?" she asked. He smirked. "The kind that ends stories." Through the fence, she saw men in hazmat suits moving in and out of the kitchen. But something was off. No news crews, no official vehicles. Just unmarked vans and uniformed men carrying boxes out instead of in. Whatever evidence had been inside was disappearing. The revelation. That night, Reyes sat in her car under the freeway overpass, laptop open, heart pounding. She uploaded the photos, the interviews, Terry's note, all of it to a secure drive. Then she opened the last file she'd gotten from her contact, a scanned PDF labeled Sterling Invoice Summary. It listed hundreds of thousands of dollars in waste management and disposal fees. But according to every internal memo, no food had ever been recorded as discarded. She scrolled to the bottom, where one signature stood alone. Approved, Sergeant Calvin Price. And beside it, a second signature, barely legible but unmistakable. Sheriff Daniel M. Hines. Her stomach dropped. The sheriff himself. The one who'd told the press there was no issue with food quality, that claims of contamination were exaggerated. The one who'd signed every yearly contract renewal for Sterling Foods. Now his name sat in ink beside the man responsible for the kitchen's inspection. Reyes stared at the screen, pulse thundering. She had it, proof of a conspiracy linking the supplier, the inspectors, and the highest office in the jail. But then her email notification chimed. New message. No subject. She opened it. A photo loaded slowly, Terry Coleman's lifeless body hanging in the laundry room. And beneath it, a single line of text. You're next, Monica. The laptop screen went black. Outside, in the reflection of her windshield, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance, creeping closer, steady, deliberate. Reyes closed her eyes, gripping the flash drive in her hand like a weapon. The car engine behind her idled for a moment. Then its lights shut off. Darkness swallowed the road. And somewhere in that silence, Cook County Jail kept serving dinner. The bleeding contracts. Rain streaked across the windshield like veins of silver, each droplet catching the glare of the city lights before vanishing into the night. Monica Reyes sat motionless behind the wheel of her parked sedan, the flash drive clutched so tightly in her hand it left small indentations in her skin. The last image she'd seen, the photo of Terry Coleman hanging lifeless in the laundry room, played over and over in her mind like a cruel loop she couldn't escape. She should have gone home. She should have driven far from Cook County, left Chicago behind, let someone else carry the truth. But something inside her refused. She'd built her entire career exposing lies, police brutality, judicial corruption, the quiet bureaucratic rot that devoured ordinary lives. This one was different. This one felt personal. Outside, the city slept restlessly. The lights from the jail flickered across the wet asphalt, distorted through the mist like the pulse of something still alive. Then, her phone buzzed. An unknown number again. She hesitated before answering. Who is this? A man's voice, low, measured. Ms. Reyes, my name doesn't matter. You don't know me, but I know what you're trying to do. If you want to live long enough to finish it, listen carefully. Her pulse quickened. Go on. There's a place in the old South Annex, behind the laundry tunnels. They keep the contracts there. Originals. Signatures. Shipping invoices. Everything. But you didn't hear it from me. And you didn't hear this next part either. Price isn't working alone. The kitchen's just the start. The line went dead. The South Annex. By 2 a.m., Monica was driving through an industrial stretch of West 31st Street, the same road where the jail's supply trucks entered after midnight. The air was heavy with rain and diesel fumes. The South Annex loomed ahead, a forgotten section of the Cook County complex closed off years earlier after a boiler explosion. The chain-link fence sagged under its own weight, the "No Entry" signs faded and bullet-pocked. She parked beneath a flickering streetlight, slipped on a rain jacket, and ducked through a gap in the fence. The building was a carcass, broken windows, collapsed ceilings, graffiti ghosts. But somewhere deep inside, she could hear a faint hum. Power. Someone had kept this place alive. Monica followed the sound through a maze of narrow corridors until she reached a steel door marked Storage C. It was padlocked, but the rust was weak. She pulled a screwdriver from her bag and worked the latch loose, her breath fogging in the cold air. The door groaned open, and there it was. Rows upon rows of file cabinets, dusty binders, and stacks of manila folders bound with string. It smelled of mildew, paper, and something faintly chemical. She switched on her flashlight and began scanning the labels. Sterling Foods, Invoice Q2, Inspection Logs 2022. Every file bore one of two signatures, C. Price or D. Hines. Her hands trembled as she flipped through them. Each invoice listed delivery weights that didn't match the consumption record. Cook County paid for 25 tons of meat monthly, enough to feed an army. But less than half ever reached the kitchen. The rest was marked, diverted for alternate distribution. Alternate distribution to where? She photographed everything, dozens of pages, serial numbers, contact names. Then she found something even stranger, a set of sealed envelopes stamped confidential, legal counsel, sterilization project. Sterilization project? She opened one. Inside was a letterhead bearing the logo of Sterling Foods Contracting and a smaller insignia below, Midwest Correctional Supply Network. The text was brief. Pursuant to Contract Amendment 4B, excess protein materials and waste products shall be reprocessed via chemical neutralization and shipped to participating facilities under sterilization initiative. Returns will be invoiced under Category 5C as non-human consumption supply. Her stomach dropped. Excess protein materials. She knew what that meant. The interruption. The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor, slow, deliberate, getting closer. Monica froze, light off, heart pounding. A beam of white light swept across the doorway. "Someone in here?" a male voice called. "Security patrol." She ducked behind a stack of boxes, praying he couldn't hear her breathing. The guard's flashlight passed inches from her face, then moved on. She waited until the sound faded, then slipped out the back, clutching the flash drive and a handful of photos. As she reached the gate, her phone buzzed again. Another message, no number. "You found the room. Good. Now ask yourself who built it." The political web. By dawn, Monica sat in a diner across from City Hall, her laptop open, coffee untouched. Rain still lashed the windows, streaking the neon reflection of the Cook County Chronicle sign across the glass. She cross-referenced every name from the invoices. Most led nowhere. Aliases, shell companies, subcontractors that existed only on paper. But one stood out. Midwest Correctional Supply Network shared an address with a lobbying firm registered under a different name, Bluefield Strategies, LLC. And among its listed clients was a familiar one, Sterling Foods Contracting. The registered agent for both companies? State Senator John T. Kearney. Kearney was no small player. He chaired the Senate Committee on Correctional Oversight, the very body responsible for approving food and service contracts statewide. Her mind reeled. The corruption went higher than she'd thought, far beyond Price or the sheriff. It was a political machine, feeding on the prison system itself. And then she saw the newest invoice date, just 2 weeks ago. Meaning, despite the scandals, despite the deaths, the operation was still running. The sheriff's shadow. Later that morning, as reporters flooded the jail entrance demanding answers about the rumored lockdown, Sheriff Hines appeared briefly before cameras. He looked calm, composed, even sympathetic. "We are aware of the false rumors circulating regarding inmate food safety," he said smoothly. "Our kitchen facilities are inspected regularly. Any claims of misconduct are politically motivated." Monica watched from her car, teeth clenched. Then a chill ran through her. The sheriff's bodyguard, standing just behind him, a tall man with a scar along his temple. She recognized him instantly. The same man from the laundromat photo. The one standing in the background behind Terry Coleman's hanging body. He met her gaze across the parking lot, smiled faintly, and raised a finger to his lips. The attempt. That night, Monica booked a room in a cheap motel off Roosevelt Road. She double-bolted the door, drew the blinds, and began uploading the files to an encrypted cloud drive. Progress: 45%, 52%, 66%. A car engine revved outside. Then, footstep. She muted her laptop, listening. The floorboards creaked just beyond her door. Someone tried the handle. "Who's there?" she called. No answer. She grabbed her phone, ready to dial 911. Then, a soft thud against the wall. A moment later, smoke. The room filled with a faint, acrid smell. She coughed, realizing too late, it wasn't smoke. It was gas. They were flushing her out. Monica kicked open the bathroom window and climbed onto the fire escape, coughing violently. The rain hit her face in cold sheets. Below, 2 men in dark jackets were climbing up. She jumped, landing hard in the alley, pain shooting through her leg. She limped toward the street, sirens wailing in the distance. A shot cracked the air. Brick dust exploded beside her head. She ducked behind a dumpster, pulling her phone free. The upload still running, 78%, 82%. She typed one message to her contact at the Chronicle. "If I don't make it, check folder name Division 10. Publish everything." Then she hit send. The extraction. By the time police arrived, the motel was in flames. Her room, completely destroyed. No body was found. The next morning, Sheriff Hines held another press conference. "A tragic fire claimed the life of a local blogger," he said gravely. "Authorities suspect arson by disgruntled inmates recently released." He didn't mention her name, but everyone knew who he meant. What he didn't know was that Monica Reyes wasn't dead. She'd crawled through the storm drains beneath the overpass, spent the night in an abandoned warehouse, her leg bleeding, flash drive still in her pocket. By sunrise, she made it to a safe house in Pilsen, an old factory converted into artist loft. Her friend, David Knox, a tech journalist with ties to investigative networks, opened the door in shock. "Jesus, Monica, you look like hell. I need your help," she whispered. "Now." The leak. They worked non-stop for the next 36 hours, scrubbing metadata, encrypting files, preparing the data drop. The evidence included Sterling's forged invoices, the sterilization letters, even surveillance footage from the annex showing unmarked trucks loading sealed barrels. Knox uploaded everything to multiple servers, using foreign press networks as backup. "Once it goes live," he said, "you can't take it back." Monica nodded. "I don't want to." At 11:59 p.m., they hit publish. Within hours, the story was everywhere. Rotten meals, rotten deals. Cook County food corruption exposed. Leaked documents reveal evidence of statewide graft, human remains contamination, and political cover-up. By dawn, protesters filled the streets outside Cook County Jail. Reporters camped outside the sheriff's office. Sterling's corporate offices were raided by federal agents. But amidst the chaos, one thing bothered Monica: the men who'd tried to kill her hadn't been seen since. And Sergeant Calvin Price was nowhere on the arrest list. 2 days later, Monica received a letter with no return address. Inside was a single photo, grainy, printed from a surveillance camera. It showed a loading dock. Rows of metal barrels marked Sterilization Initiative. The date stamp read yesterday. And the location? Not Cook County. Indiana Department of Corrections, a Westville facility. Underneath the photo, a single handwritten note: "You stopped one kitchen. The others are still cooking." Monica sat back in her chair, the rain beginning again outside the window. The city pulsed with the noise of outrage, of headlines and interviews and politics. But deep down, she knew, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much darker. The barrels. Chicago's skyline bled into the horizon like a dying ember, orange, bruised, and fading fast. Rain drizzled in fine needles against the cracked windows of the Pilsen safehouse. Monica Reyes sat hunched over her desk, the photograph of the Westville barrels spread out beside a half-empty coffee cup. Every instinct told her to stop. She'd survived a fire, a manhunt, and an attempted assassination. She'd brought down a multimillion-dollar food contract and exposed a sheriff. She should have disappeared. But she couldn't. Because if that photo was real, it meant the operation didn't die in Chicago, it moved. Indiana was just the next chapter. She took a long breath and looked at her reflection in the laptop screen. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, but her focus was razor-sharp. The caption at the bottom of the photo said everything she needed to know: Westville Correctional Facility. Loading dock 3 to 2:47 a.m. Somebody inside the system wanted her to see this. The trail to Indiana. By noon the next day, Monica was driving east on I-90, rain washing away the grime of the city. Every few miles, she checked her rearview mirror. A gray sedan had been following since she left the state line, never close, never distant. She'd switched SIM cards twice, paid cash for gas, and avoided tolls, but whoever was watching knew exactly where she was going. Westville. A massive, aging complex sitting on the outskirts of LaPorte County, surrounded by cornfields and forgotten towns. Officially, it held 3,500 inmates. Unofficially, it was rumored to store something else: chemical drums, reprocessing units, and trucks that came and went without record. She parked a mile away, pulling on a windbreaker and cap. From a ridge overlooking the compound, she raised her camera. Through the telephoto lens, she could see the loading docks, lined with barrels identical to the one in the photo. Silver-gray with red hazard stripes and small white tags marked Sterilization Initiative. But these weren't empty. They were sealed, stacked 3 high and sweating in the heat. And every few minutes, a forklift would carry one inside a warehouse marked Biodisposal Unit, Restricted Access. The informant. As the sun sank, Monica drove into town. Westville was quiet, too quiet. Main Street looked frozen in 1998. A diner, a shuttered movie theater, and a bar called Marty's Corner. She entered the bar and took a seat at the far end. The air smelled like stale beer and fryer grease. A few men in work uniforms sat near the jukebox, trading low murmurs. After 20 minutes, one of them, a broad-shouldered man with prison ID keys still clipped to his belt, sat beside her. "You're not from here," he said without looking up. "Neither are those barrels," she replied. His jaw tightened. "You a reporter?" "Something like that." He took a slow drink, then whispered, "I knew it would come here sooner or later." "You from Cook County?" She nodded. "Then you already know what's in those drums." Monica stared. "Tell me." The man exhaled, glancing around. "Name's Wesley. I worked sanitation inside Westville for 8 years. Started noticing strange deliveries last spring, sealed containers labeled protein byproduct. No one could touch them. Only outside contractors unloaded them. They wore hazmat suits, but they never logged anything. I checked once. Boxes had Sterling Foods barcodes. Her pulse spiked. Sterling's gone. Shut down after the scandal. He laughed bitterly. Sterling changed its name. Now it's Midwest Provision Solutions. Same trucks. Same people. Different paper trail. He leaned closer, voice trembling. Those drums, they say it's sterilized waste. But I saw one rupture last month. The smell, it wasn't chemicals. It was rot. Monica's throat tightened. Rot. Human rot, Wesley said. Like something that used to be alive. The warehouse. That night, Monica and Wesley parked near the west perimeter fence, the air thick with humidity and insects. He handed her a stolen ID badge and nodded toward the guard booth. They switch shifts every 2 hours. You'll have 5 minutes tops. They crawled through the ditch and slipped inside a side gate. The warehouse loomed ahead, windowless, concrete gray, lit by motion lights that buzzed faintly. Inside, the temperature dropped sharply. The air smelled of disinfectant, metal, and faint decay. Rows of barrels stretched into the dark, condensation dripping from their lids. Each bore the same serial code, MPS 42A CHGO Reproc. Chicago. Reprocessed. She lifted her camera and snapped photos. Then she noticed something strange. The barrels weren't sealed tight. One near the back hissed softly, steam escaping from a cracked valve. Careful, Wesley warned, pulling a cloth over his face. That's how the other guy got sick. She crouched, lifting her flashlight. Inside, under a layer of congealed gray liquid, something floated, something that looked like a bone. Not animal. Too straight. Too human. Monica gagged, stumbling back. Oh my God. Wesley nodded grimly. They're grinding them down. The ones that die without family, the unclaimed bodies. They're not cremating him, they're turning him into waste stock. For what? She whispered. He hesitated. That's the part you don't want to know. The hidden document. At the back of the warehouse was an office with a glass window overlooking the floor. Inside, a computer hummed softly beside a filing cabinet. Monica slipped inside, scrolling through folders on the desktop. Most were routine: shipping logs, sanitation reports, contractor schedules. But one caught her eye: Requisition Series 9. She opened it. Each entry listed a facility, a shipment code, and a destination. Not just Westville, Corcoran, Angola, Pelican Bay. The deliveries were nationwide. And the final column, Product Application, listed 2 words: Nutrient Reconstitution. She stared in disbelief. They're putting it back into the food. Wesley's face turned white. You mean, they're feeding the processed remains through the supply chain? It's cheaper than protein powder. They call it reconstitution. She copied the file to her flash drive, hands shaking. This is it. This is what they've been hiding. The alarm suddenly, a loudspeaker crackled overhead. Unauthorized personnel detected in Zone 4. All units respond. Go! Wesley shouted. They sprinted down the aisle as lights began flashing red. Monica clutched the drive in her pocket. A siren blared, and steel shutters began descending from the ceiling. They ducked under one, emerging into the yard as guards poured out of the main gate. Searchlights swept across the field. Wesley pointed toward the drainage canal. That way. They ran for it, boots sinking into mud. Monica slipped, hitting the ground hard. Wesley pulled her up, shouting, "Don't stop!" A gunshot cracked the night. He staggered, eyes wide. "Wes, keep going!" He collapsed, blood spreading across his shirt. Monica froze for half a second, then ran. The escape. She made it to the drainage ditch, crawling through muck until the sound of shouting faded behind her. The tunnel spat her out near an access road miles from the compound. Rain poured harder now, mixing with the smell of diesel and blood. She wiped her hands clean, trembling, and looked down at the flash drive. Wesley's blood stained the casing. In the distance, sirens wailed. She knew they'd find his body. They'd call it trespassing or sabotage. But they wouldn't find her. Not yet. The leak reborn. By morning, she was back on the highway, heading toward Chicago. Her phone buzzed with encrypted messages, fellow journalists sharing updates. The previous leak had sparked national outrage. Now, this evidence could destroy what was left of the corrupt network. At a rest stop, she opened her laptop, uploaded the drive, and watched as the files spread across mirrored servers. Shipment manifest. Photos. The Requisition Series 9 document. But as she scrolled, one final file appeared, one she hadn't opened before. It was labeled Contingency, Westville Phase 2. The text inside was brief, typed in bold capital letters. In the event of exposure or media compromise, transfer operations to Louisiana State Penitentiary Angola facility. Continue nutrient processing under new entity, Red Harvest Solutions. Approval, M. Vaughn or Director, Michael Vaughn. The same man supposedly in federal custody. She whispered, "He's still running it." A single message appeared on her screen. No sender. Good work, Monica. You found Phase 1. Now let's see if you can survive Phase 2. Her laptop flickered. The cursor froze. Then the screen went black. Behind her, in the reflection of the diner window, headlights flashed twice, the signal she remembered from Chicago. Someone had followed her back. She closed the laptop, grabbed the flash drive, and slipped out the side door into the pouring rain. The road ahead stretched toward the south. Toward Angola. Toward the end of the trail. But in her gut, she knew, this wasn't about food anymore. It was about control, of bodies, of systems, of truth itself. And she was walking straight into its mouth. Red Harvest. The Louisiana sun burned low and heavy over the horizon, turning the swamps gold and blood red. The two-lane road stretched endlessly ahead, broken only by distant cypress trees and the glint of razor wire far in the distance. Monica Reyes drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting over the flash drive still smeared with Wesley's blood. The highway sign read Louisiana State Penitentiary Angola, 12 miles. To the locals, it was called the farm. A 28-square-mile plantation of concrete and sorrow, built on soil that once grew cotton, and still worked by inmates in the fields under the eyes of mounted guards. This was where the paper trail ended. The place Sterling's rebirth, Red Harvest Solutions, called home. The ghost of Vaughn. The world believed Michael Vaughn was behind bars, serving life without parole after the San Quentin scandal. But inside the leaks, his name kept resurfacing. Monica had verified the impossible. Vaughn wasn't in federal custody at all. He'd been quietly transferred to Angola under a protective reassignment order. Protective. Right. A ghost hidden among prisoners. Now he was overseeing Red Harvest's nutrient reconstitution project, cloaked under state contracts and agricultural funding. But what really broke Monica was one line in a classified email thread she'd intercepted. Phase 2 confirmed. Supply ready. Distribution begins Q3. Distribution. That word again. Not containment, distribution. Whatever was happening here wasn't just disposal. It was export. The farm. The gates of Angola rose before her like the entrance to another world, massive, sun-bleached concrete walls crowned with coiled razor wire. Beyond them, fields of men in khaki uniforms bent under the punishing heat, swinging hose across cracked red soil. The guards on horseback carried rifles. Their faces were calm. Angola wasn't a prison, it was a kingdom. Monica checked in at the visitors' center under a fake name. Elaine Murphy, independent contractor with Red Harvest Logistics. The ID was forged perfectly, courtesy of Knox's contacts. The receptionist didn't even blink. "You're here for the nutrition audit?" Monica nodded. "Building 5, the woman said, sliding her a pass. End of the hall, past the feed storage. As she walked across the open yard, the air thick with humidity and dust, she caught glimpses of the truth Angola's brochures never mentioned, shackles glinting at the ankles of field workers, sweat darkening their backs, silence enforced by fear. It was a plantation resurrected. The facility, Building 5, was cold and sterile, a sharp contrast to the suffocating heat outside. Inside, rows of stainless steel vats churned beneath fluorescent lights. Pipes hummed. The smell of bleach mixed with something sweet and rotting. She passed a sign marked Red Harvest Solutions, Bioprocessing Unit. A man in a white coat approached, clipboard in hand. "You're with logistics?" "Yes," she said smoothly. "Elaine Murphy. Here for compliance." He adjusted his glasses. "Doctor, Vaughn's expecting you." Her blood ran cold. He led her down a narrow hallway lined with refrigerated doors and digital keypad. Behind the glass, she glimpsed sealed containers, metal drums identical to Westville's. But here, they weren't labeled waste. They were labeled Supplemental Protein Compound 42. Monica forced her breathing steady. "And where exactly does this go?" The man smiled. "Oh, everywhere. Military rations, disaster relief, even prison meals across 6 states. Efficiency is progress." The words rattled in her head, they're feeding it back into the system. The return of the director, they stopped before a frosted glass door. A plaque read Dr. M. Vaughn, Director. The man knocked. "Your 3 p.m. is here." "Send her in," a voice replied. Monica stepped inside and froze. Vaughn stood behind a steel desk, older now but unmistakable. Clean-shaven, calm, dressed in a lab coat with the Red Harvest logo stitched over the pocket. His eyes were the same cold blue as before, unblinking, analytical. "Elaine Murphy," he said, smiling faintly. "Or should I say, Monica Reyes." Her stomach dropped. He gestured toward the chair. "You've been busy. San Quentin, Cook County, Westville. You've caused quite the stir." She stayed standing. "You killed people." Vaughn's smile didn't falter. "Killed? No. We utilized. Waste not, want not. You're processing human remains. Selling them." He leaned back, unbothered. "Do you have any idea how much waste correctional systems produce? How many unclaimed bodies sit in morgues, forgotten by families who never cared? We're simply recycling. Turning the dead into sustenance for the living. The cycle of justice feeding the cycle of survival. You're insane." He laughed quietly. "No, just efficient. The showroom." He pressed a button on his desk. The far wall slid open to reveal a glass viewing window overlooking a massive processing chamber. Below, inmates in biohazard suits shoveled indistinct material from conveyor belts into giant vat. Machines ground and pressed it into pale blocks that rolled down another belt, stamped with expiration date. On the wall, a banner read, "Red Harvest Solutions, Nourishing the Future." Vaughn watched her expression carefully. The world doesn't care where its food comes from. They just want it cheap. You exposed the first phase, and the public barely blinked. A week of outrage, and then back to their screens. You think they'll care about this? Monica felt her skin crawl. "You're distributing this nationwide." He nodded. "Already in 5 states. Soon, federal contracts. Soon, overseas." She took a step back. "I'm taking this to the world." He tilted his head. "No, Monica. You won't." 2 guards appeared at the doorway, armed. Vaughn folded his hands. "You're good at running. Let's see how far you get this time." The breakout. They grabbed her arms, but Monica twisted free, slamming one with her elbow and grabbing his taser. A spark cracked through the air as she plunged it into the other guard's neck. Vaughn shouted something, but she didn't hear. She bolted through the hallway, alarms blaring. She ran past the processing vats, grabbing a sample bag and a folder off a cart. Behind her, guards yelled into radios. The metal doors slammed shut one by one. Monica ducked through an emergency exit, stumbling into the blinding Louisiana sunlight. An inmate working the fields looked up just in time to see her sprint across the yard toward a delivery truck idling near the gate. She jumped into the cab, hot-wired the ignition, and peeled off down the dirt road as sirens echoed behind her. Through the cracked side mirror, she saw Vaughn standing in the doorway, hands clasped calmly, watching her go. The pursuit. She didn't stop driving until she hit the highway. The truck smelled faintly of iron and rot. She didn't dare look in the back. Her phone buzzed with encrypted messages from Knox. "Monica? Where the hell are you? You're trending again. FBI reopening Cook County investigation. Whatever you found, send it now." She pulled over beneath an overpass, grabbed her laptop, and uploaded the footage from the facility's security camera she'd copied mid-escape. The file name appeared automatically. Nutrient42_prod live feed. Her hands trembled as she attached the sample data, the photos, the map. But before she could hit send, another notification appeared. Her GPS was being remotely accessed. Then the truck's engine died. She looked up. A black SUV had pulled onto the shoulder behind her. The final stand. She ran into the trees, laptop clutched to her chest. The swamp swallowed sound, only the buzz of insects and the distant croak of frogs. Voices echoed behind her. Flashlights cut through the dark. Spread out. She can't be far. Her foot slipped into a puddle of red mud. She stumbled, falling onto her knees. In the distance, she saw a faint glimmer, an old maintenance shed half buried under moss. She crawled inside, slamming the door behind her. Her laptop still flickered. Battery, 9%. Signal weak. She tethered her phone, whispering under her breath, "Come on, come on." The upload bar crept forward. 45%. 62%. Footsteps outside. They were close now. One voice, familiar. "Come. Vaughn. Monica. You can't stop this. You can only join it. The world runs on consumption, and we're just feeding the demand." She pressed send all. The screen froze. Then, the message appeared. Upload complete. She smiled through tears. Feed on that. The door burst open. A single flash of light, then nothing. Aftermath. 3 days later, news outlets across the country exploded with headlines: Red Harvest exposed. Human remains found in prison food supply chain. Angola warden and private contractors under investigation. FBI launches nationwide inquiry into prison corruption network. Her name dominated every feed. Monica Reyes, journalist, presumed dead. In Chicago, Knox stood on the rooftop of his apartment, phone in hand, watching the last upload she'd sent. Grainy footage of inmates processing protein in Angola's factory, Vaughn visible in the background. The government denied involvement. Red Harvest Solutions dissolved overnight. But the supply contracts, the ones Monica traced, didn't vanish. They were simply renamed. And somewhere, in a dark office in Washington, a new file was stamped Project Renewal. Epilogue. Weeks later, a fisherman in the Louisiana Delta pulled a soaked notebook from the river. Most of the pages were ruined, except one. Written in shaky ink, "The dead don't disappear. They just change form. And sometimes they feed us." He turned it over, puzzled. On the back, 3 letters faintly carved through the wet paper: M.R. He threw it back into the river, never realizing the world had already consumed her story.